Welcome to your Everyday Life podcast with words of encouragement. We hope that you walk away today in your everyday walking around kind of life, feeling energized by the words of encouragement you are about to hear. Each week, the message will inspire you in your plain old ordinary life. Knowing that Jesus is there with you every step of the day and not somewhere far off will give you new perspectives of your daily life. You can find us online at youreverydaylife.org. Go there and subscribe so you can get new weekly devotional blog posts in addition to the many posts on site. So be encouraged in your everyday life. And now, here are your hosts, Scott Ramsey and his wife, Carmen.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, as the introduction said, Scott Ramsey. And I'm not going to pan the camera over, but my co-host, Carmen, who's usually with me, is working on another project tonight. So she may pop in and join us later. But welcome, everybody. Glad you're here with us. We have a special guest I want to do as he's with us here. A little special introduction just for you to get an idea of where he's coming from, who he is, what he does. So our guest today has been a business owner for 13 years now in the commercial cleaning industry. Interesting journey and how that all got started. But he's made several recent investments in some other businesses as well with a few partners. He's passionate. Is that a good word? Passionate. Is that a strong enough word? About helping people find a relationship with Jesus Christ, which is what this podcast is all about, that everyday walk with Jesus. So he's not just talking about praying, like, I guess it's time to pray, but a relationship that goes much deeper than that. His dream is to become financially independent. Matter of fact, I think, which is a great place for people to be, I think he's already debt-free. But he's talking about moving on from running his business from day to day, putting the right people in place so that he can move on to pursue some of these adventures and ventures. I think I can say it that way, right? I'm kind of ad-libbing this, Chris. I'll get to the introduction here in a second. But I know part of your desire and part of his desire in the next few years is to focus more on coaching of other business owners. And he wants to be able to write a book based on his lessons taught to him by God through the building of his business. So I always love this part when he's dead and gone. Not that part. I should have rephrased that. That came out wrong. But what he wants to be remembered for, I love that part, when he's dead and gone, is for having been successful in helping many business owners and just people in general find a deeper and more purposeful relationship with Jesus. Welcome to the podcast, Chris Middleton.
Thanks for having me on, Scott. Great to be here.
Yeah, I stumbled through that introduction a little bit. Is there anything you want to add or clarify?
Well, I'm not hoping to be dead and gone anytime soon, but I do hope. I've had a kind of a rough past history, and so I'm hoping to change my reputation a little bit as I move into my final, more advanced years in life of being a sage and being somebody that people look to for wisdom, and to be not remembered as a comedian and life of the party that I have been a lot of times in my life, but to be remembered as somebody that really helped steer people into a deeper relationship with the Lord.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm excited to get into some of this with your story and your journey, because like many of us, and of course we all have our own story that I know will resonate with people listening and watching this, Chris. But God has done some amazing work in your life to bring you from where you were, and I remember you sharing some of that, to where you are now. Quite the journey. So how did that all start, Chris? Where did that walk? Where did that relationship with Jesus Christ start? What did that look like?
Well, I was born and raised in the Catholic Church. Went to Catholic school all through elementary up to high school. And to me, it was just boring. Like church, I didn't I didn't really, especially in my teenage years, I think I probably skipped a few times when I was supposed to go without mom and those sorts of things. I fell away from church completely during college. I might have went once or twice or three times during college. Once I got married, we started having kids. We started going back to church. Again, it was just the process of going to church every week, listening, but I wasn't really doing anything outside of that. I mean, I would say prayers here or there, but really nothing else. And then it was around 2005, and we had a particular priest at this time, and he'd come from a business background. His family had a business. He was in the business for a long time, really felt a calling to the priesthood and had left. And he spoke, it seemed like every week he was talking about having a deeper relationship with Jesus. And I was like, just thinking, what does that mean? I don't
Yeah.
understand really what he means. But I got thinking about it, like, what does that look like? And I had seen Rick Warren's book, Purpose Driven Life, several times, never picked it up. And one day I just happened to be, I don't remember if it was a Walmart or where, but it was like clearance for like $5. I'm like, I'm going to buy that book and see what happens.
Yeah.
So I picked it up and I started reading it every day for the next 40 days. And that kind of led me into, it wasn't very consistent to start with, but it led me into a routine where I was starting to have a little bit of quiet time every day, just reading that book and thinking about what I was reading, meditating on the exercises he puts you through. Um, and then it just kind of morphed from there. I became hungrier for it. And so I started, having more time in the morning. And eventually it turned into now it's every day for me, at least 45 minutes to an hour, and sometimes a little bit more of just quiet time. There's really no agenda. It's not just me sitting down saying, Catholics are famous for saying Our Fathers and Hail Marys. It's not just about that. I mean, I say those on occasion. For me, it's just a conversation. It's literally like we're having right here. I'm
Yeah.
talking to God about what do you have planned for me? What's going on? I'm usually start my day in gratitude. That's one of the lessons I learned through building my business, through some of the struggles was if you focus on gratitude, you tend to get through those struggles a lot faster. When you think about all the good things that are going on in your life. And if you look, there's always something good going on. Most of the time we're just so focused on the bad things that we don't see all the good things. And so,
Yeah.
start out with some gratitude. There may be some prayer requests in there for specific people, or right now I'm praying a lot for the Ukrainian people. I'm certainly sure with some of the things that happened today. I'll be praying for some other folks down in Texas. But it's more of a, here's kind of what I'm thinking about, Lord. What do you think about that?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's sitting and listening, and sometimes there's a conversation, and
Yeah.
I just, there's some devotional in there as well that helps guide me a little bit as well. So,
Okay. Well, I love where you brought us to already to where you are now, but I need to back up a little bit. First of
okay,
all, this is my fault because one thing I love letting people know about when I introduce my guests is who they are. We heard about a lot about what you do, but I failed to bring up the fact that you're married to a beautiful woman named Kim, and you have four strapping boys that range from
correct.
what ages?
My boys are 19 to 27.
Okay,
So,
yeah,
yeah, my youngest just finished first year of school. My oldest is out in Boston. My two middle ones are working and both still at home. They're not out the door yet.
yep.
Yeah, my beautiful wife, she's a registered nurse, and I've been trying to convince her to join me in semi-retired life. I think that may happen sometime early next month. Um, so that we can, I told her I wanted to play tennis and be on the boat every day this summer, and start enjoying some of the blessings God has given us, and then start steering our lives towards giving time to causes and doing some volunteering things together and things like that. So um, Kim and I are married 30 years this October. And yeah, it's been a real blessing. It hasn't been easy, but I can say probably the last 6 or 7 years, our life has drastically changed and our relationship has drastically changed and grown. And our marriage is probably healthier than it's ever been.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you talking about Kim and where you are in life reminded me, and I don't know if you had a chance to read it, Chris. My last devotional blog that everybody can go to this site and see your podcast from was on the ruins. Does that remind you of anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that on the trip that I was with you on, or is that what you
Yes.
were discussing?
And
Yes.
it revolved a little bit around the Mayan ruins with a picture of you and Kim and the Onlers and Carmen up on the ruin, up on the pyramid type deal with me with my feet on the ground
Yeah.
down below, snapping a picture up at you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I knew you didn't want to climb up there. So that was
Well, you know
fun.
what? I did mention in that post that those steps were not OSHA standard.
No, they definitely were not OSHA standard. It was a little bit crazy how steep those steps were, but
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that whole trip, that I enjoyed the journey of getting to the Mayan ruins as much as I enjoyed the Mayan ruins.
Wasn't that something? Yeah.
That was an amazing trip just to get there. That was really cool.
Yeah. It
A
was
lot of
being
people.
able to see the country and see some of the people
Yeah,
and
and then
meet them on the journey.
we describe that to our friends when we're telling that story about when we pulled into the ruins. We thought we were pulling into Jurassic Park
Yes.
because the holler monkeys were screaming so loud in the trees,
Yeah.
and you just felt like you pulled into Jurassic Park and just looking around like, where's the dinosaurs? Like, this is crazy. It was so cool.
Yeah. It was. It was. So when you think about, you mentioned, having an attitude of gratitude and being thankful now in your life. I took that the way you worded it in contrast to where you were. Um, can I say back in the, I don't know if it's manufacturing days, but when you were in management, you talked about being a little harder person.
Yes, I was definitely a much harder person. My natural personality is a run you over type personality, to where I didn't understand why people didn't like being on my team. But basically, I told them they were idiots. Why are you doing it like that? You need to do it like this. And, just didn't have people skills. And, um, I look at it back then, I did everything that happened to me. I'd always be, woe, it's me. I'm having a pity party. Why am I not getting promoted? I couldn't see how horrible I was as a person. Um, and my wife shared with me, yeah, our relationship has evolved so much the last few years. She's comfortable enough to tell me things that she used to not be comfortable to tell me. And one day we were discussing things, and she talked about how when I would come through, because she stayed at home at that time with our boys, and she there was a period of time she would work like one day a week in the evenings once I got home, but she just kind of kept her foot in the door. And she would talk about how when she heard the garage door opening, she would cringe, knowing I was coming through the door.
Wow. How'd that make you feel? Yeah.
Oh, I was heartbroken. I
Yeah.
almost cried. It almost chokes me up to talk about it because
Yeah.
it hurt me so bad to know I was that bad.
Wow.
And again, through my contemplation time and sitting down with the Lord and thinking through this, I'm like, I'm asking, why was I like that? Why was I like that towards her? Because I would come in and like, why is there still toys on the floor? When's dinner ready? Just things like that. And I think in my heart, I was envious because I think, I was working incredibly. My job was very difficult, very physical. I start at 4 o'clock in the morning and wouldn't get home until 5:30 or 6 most of the time, on my feet most of the time, never having time to sit down even. I would literally go to my lunchbox, open up. I had button down shirt, open my shirt up and put sandwich and chips in there and walk back out to the floor. And I could be sitting there talking to you and all of a sudden just pull a sandwich out. And people would be looking at me like, what the heck? Well, I didn't have time to actually sit down and eat.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think I looked at like, I'm seeing her, she's going on play dates and going to the children's museum. And I was envious, probably was part of it. But when I sat there and I contemplated that with God, what he told me was I didn't value what she was doing. I thought what I was doing was much more important because I was putting bread on the table, providing the income for the family. But she was doing the most important job in the world. She was raising our 4 kids, disciplining them and teaching them respect and teaching them how to interact with other kids. And our two middle kids have some special needs, and so they weren't easy to raise either. Um, but I just did not value what she was doing, and I didn't see it. And so once I realized that, probably cry a little bit. I went back to her and apologized, and we both literally just cried a little bit together. And
Hmm.
I said, "I'm so
That's
sorry
awesome.
I was like
Yeah.
that."
Wow. Hmm. So, what was the turning point? Was it Rick Warren's book, or was it, because you had a relation, you knew who God was. Obviously, you grew up in a Catholic setting, attended church, so you knew about God. But where was the turning point with all that that brought you to where you are now?
I think the turning point was that book introduced me back to reading. Shortly after that, I mean, I left college. I swore I'd never read another book, and I think I only read one book, The Firm, from John Grisham. And that book, I thought, well, this is really good. I like it. And then I actually met another gentleman that had a network marketing type business, and he introduced me to a book from Robert Kiyosaki, who you guys have started reading recently. It was his second book called The Cash Flow Quadrant, which, I was very upset reading that book, thinking, why didn't I know this information in high school?
Yes,
But
absolutely.
it was such an incredible book. And I thought, man, this is an awesome. I love this. And so I actually joined this guy's network marketing team. And what I found out was, yeah, they had some products to sell, but what they really were was a leadership development company. And I started reading 2 books a month on everything about um, time management, people skills, finances, leadership. 2 books a month for probably three. Well, I still probably read. I don't know if I read 2 books a month anymore, but I do at least one, probably two. But I've been doing it for years now, and I think that gave me the confidence to realize I don't need corporate America anymore. I can do this on my own. My whole demeanor started to change, and then during that time, like I say, from those early morning devotionals with Rick Warren, just started to build. Sometimes I'd start out with a little bit of devotional time and then go into reading for 30 minutes. And I would read 30 minutes a day, every day, and get through a couple books a month. And so it just started me down a whole different path. And I'll tell you what I've discovered now is if I don't take that time, my day is completely thrown off. Even to the point where I've been involved with a men's group early mornings, and I don't like early mornings anymore. I did early mornings long enough, so now I don't like to wake up to an alarm clock. Unfortunately, I wake up to my wife's, but um, I did a men's group this last fall and spring, and we met on Monday mornings at 6 or started at 6:30. We did breakfast and like a video series, and then we had some small group chat. And I was going right from there to get my day started. I'd get back home, get around, and get out the door, and my day was off. I'm like, this just isn't working for me. I still, even though I was doing something in line and learning about our faith and how to be a better husband and man and all these things, I still wasn't having my quiet time. So I'm like, I think I did about 3 weeks of it, and on every Monday I felt like I was off, like my day was off. So I'm like, okay. So I changed it up and I went to that. And then I would come home, get my son around, take him to work, come back home and sit down for an hour and have my quiet time. Then I'd go to the office because I'm like,
But that's interesting, Chris, because it, I don't know if I think you probably realized you said this, but that I think a lot of Christians get caught up in doing instead of being. Is that the right way to put it? I mean, you were doing the right stuff. I mean, you were going to that Bible study group, you were doing this, you were doing that, getting your day going, but you weren't being, you weren't spending that personal time with the Lord.
right, exactly. The personal time was missing. And that's the most intimate part for me. I started to realize over the years and a little bit of traveling I've gotten to do that, or even if we were out hiking or something, I always felt closest to God when I'm either in the woods or I'm at the water. And so that inspired us. I'm like, if we're going to stay where we're at, I want to be on the lake. We moved here to the lake here a couple of years ago. I feel like I'm on vacation all the time now. And my days are spent looking out at the lake in the morning for that 45 minutes to an hour. And just that's where I feel closest connection to God. And, I can't remember what Bible passage it is where somebody was listening for God and the winds came and then an earthquake came and I think the fires came and then a
Samuel.
whisper.
Yeah.
And it was the whisper of God because
Yep.
God wants to be with you in your stillness. And, for
Good.
me, I find myself talking too much. And I'll talk to him. I'll be like, God, I'm talking too much. Let me try and sit here quietly. Do you have anything you want to say to me? Because I find when we sit here and we try and let our minds be free, our mind starts to fill up with other things. And it's a whole meditation type thing to actually sit back and try and let God talk with you. But I actually, the other thing I discovered over time was on days when I felt like I was really busy, like, man, I got a lot on my plate today. I'm only going to give you 15 minutes today. My day would be a mess. So I switched that up and I started doubling down. So I'd be like, I got a lot on my plate today. I'm going to give you more time. And those days I might, instead of 45 minutes, I give them an hour and 15 minutes. The day is smooth. Things take care of themselves. I get through the day. I'm like, that was a breeze.
Yeah. 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 I want to come back to a clarification there, Chris, because I know what you're saying, but I want everybody else to know what you mean. So you're not saying that, hey, I spend that 45 minutes, or if I need to double down, even more time, and then I go about my day on my own. That's not what you're saying at all. That's the preparation for walking with him through the rest of the day. I think I know you well enough to be able to say that, but that's what you mean, right? I mean,
right. Yeah. Some things, and a lot of times it's things I'm working on. Right now, I'm working on, and I've been asking God to help me to love the way that He loves, to help me to love Him the way that He loves me, and to help me to love my wife and others the way that He loves me. And then I tell myself, I know I need to be quick to listen and slow to speak and think about what I say before I say it. And so sometimes just that, if I don't have anything else, that becomes my focus for the day. Um, Sometimes the devotional I'm reading it's a Catholic devotional called Exodus 90. If there's any Catholic men listening that haven't gotten that app, it's a wonderful app, and it's all about men having an exodus out of their previous life and journeying through the woods to a new life with God. And there's a lot of great material in there, and sometimes it gets me thinking about other things. Like recently, it was talking about us having irrational fears. And, it asked me to think about what I'm fearful of. And I don't have a lot of fears, but when I thought about it, I thought, well, there is one thing I do have some fear over, like a little bit of a heightened sense of fear. And it's a certain demographic of people. And I think because of how they're portrayed constantly in the news, that's what I see when I see this description of this type of person. Like if I'm out in a store and I see 3 or 4 people like this, of this type of person, I start to get like, I want to be away from them. Mm-hmm. And I thought, that's not fair. I mean, a lot of these people are awesome people. And because of what the news portrays all the time, I don't necessarily, I have an unnecessary fear of them, of these folks. And so that helps me now to be conscious of that. And so that's kind of where my focus has been the last week since I read that, is when I see these types of folks out in the community, rather than try to avoid them, I'm trying to engage them.
Yeah.
Because I want to deal with that irrational fear and see, unfortunately, God could see the heart and mind of people, and He knew what was in the hearts and minds. I would love it if we had that ability. Yeah. I could look at somebody and be like, oh, this guy's a good person. I can't do that. And so, but I shouldn't have a sense of that fear either. So now today I was actually just praying for discernment over that. Like if there is a real need for me to have that fear, help me to discern when I need to avoid those situations versus engage people.
Yeah, yeah. So is a scene that comes to mind right away, and I know a lot of people have watched this. I don't know if you and Kim have, but The Chosen, and it's the scene where Jesus was with the disciples on the road, and some lady was randomly there picking flowers for her shop or something, and all of a sudden this leper walked up, and it's kind of like if in today's terms, if somebody with COVID walked up without a mask, right? When COVID
Yeah.
first broke out, everybody all of a sudden was in fear, the disciples, but Jesus just, I mean, he was like, hey, went right up to him, and the disciples were ready to protect Jesus however they knew how, but um, Jesus, it didn't bother him because he wanted to reflect who he was, his love for that person, in spite of what they looked like, what they felt like, what they had, or what they were going through.
Right.
And that's what I hear you saying is that we have this built-in uh, fear sometimes of certain things or certain types or groups or whatever, and they're unfounded.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so that's what I'm looking for here is when you're in your everyday walk, that's Christ walking beside you and helping you through those fears and allowing you to be able to reflect him.
Right.
Even I picture it like you're walking beside me and I want to reflect you to other people. And so I'm trying to reflect who you are to them. So anyway, that's just a powerful thing to me. And I love that.
Yeah. Through this journey of building my business, um, I won't go into the whole story. I think maybe we might share some of that later in a different avenue. But um, I went through some big struggles early on, and then all of a sudden the business started taking off like crazy, to where it was very intense, a lot of work, a lot of hours, and I was in constant communication with God, like all the time, all day long. Um, I listened to nothing but Christian music for that period of time. I don't think I listened to anything else but Christian music. And when I was out cleaning, because I was cleaning a lot during that time, trying to build the business, I would be singing what I just heard in the car on the way over. Um, if I was hiring people, I'd say, God, if this is not the right person, please get them off the bus quick. Don't let me waste my time. Sometimes they would never show up to the job the next day. Sometimes they never started. Sometimes they were there 3 days and left. Be like, okay, I'll keep working till you tell me it's the right one, till we get the right one. Um, but because I didn't want to waste time on people that would stay for a month and then quit, I wanted people that stayed long term, and so I just wanted to get through that faster. There was times when I was cleaning. Remember I was in this church, and I was getting tired of cleaning this church. It was a daytime clean, and I was cleaning so much at night. I had other things I wanted to do during the day, and I was like, God, I really, really need somebody to clean this church, and I just wasn't having any luck. And all of a sudden, my phone rang, and it was this gal who'd gotten my number from Dean and Nancy Reister, another couple that I knew from Fort Wayne, Indiana, and she's like, yeah, I know Dean, and I'm looking for a job, and I live in this area. It was right close to where this church was, and I'm like, really? I was just praying about this. Like, are you serious? And so, we end up talking. They worked for us. She and her boyfriend ended up working for us, some during the morning there, some in the evening at the church or at the school that was connected with this church. And I think they worked for me a year and a half or something like that. And then they moved on. But I was like, that was a God answering moment, like right there. And then, those 4 years, as I look back and I would have my contemplative time with the Lord, and I was thinking about things. Now all of a sudden my life shifted, and business is going good. Everything's going good. Well, I'd still having my morning devotional time, but my day of communication continually was not there. And so I'm like, as I thought back, I thought, you know what I really miss is I miss the constant interaction I had with God for that 4 year period where life was very, very intense and I needed him. And that's what we tend to do is like when things aren't good, we lean on God. But then when things get good and everything's going good, it's like, yeah, I'm good. I got this. I don't need you anymore. I'm in control. And I was like, well, there's no reason I can't be like that. It's just as a conscious effort because, at that time I needed him. So I was like, please be here. Now everything's going good. Now it has to be until it becomes a habit. I have to consciously think about that through the day. And that's another thing I've been working on that I feel like God's directing me to is I want to be part of all your day. So when you have decisions to make, stop and talk to me about it. So
Absolutely.
as bigger decisions now come up and be like, okay, what do you think about this? What should I do about that? Sometimes I get a gut feeling. It's not like I hear him actually physically talk to me. I wish I could. I wish I had the ear that Moses had and could actually hear him. But I've learned the discernment enough through the time I've spent to know when he's talking to me.
Right. So, Chris, I want to come back to that because I think that's the essence of what we want people to catch in this podcast. And but before we do, my co-host just joined us.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
I apologize. I was in the middle of working with a client and we were working on a deal. I'm a real estate agent, if you didn't know that. And it didn't happen, but God provides and he protects. So that's okay. We'll just keep plugging along. And I'm glad I was able to stop by and hang out with Chris and my guy for a little bit.
So
awesome.
Go ahead, Chris.
We're excited to see the finished product of Chateau Mariposa in Weeki Wachee and come down for a stay.
We are excited too.
Yeah,
it is close. Yeah, and to have you guys would be most awesome.
Yeah, certainly. We miss those vacation times.
Yeah, gosh.
Yes, we need to do that again soon.
Yes, we do. Agreed.
So, Carmen, Chris was just sharing about his journey, obviously, up to this point. And back in the earlier part of his business, what would you say that was probably 10, 12 years ago?
Well, 2009 to 2013 was very intense.
Yeah. And so you were sharing with us how you're implementing God into not just that morning time, but now it's like, okay, Lord, we're walking through this day together. Help me be more conscious of that. So how do you do that? And what does that look like?
Well, so like I say, when times got good again, then I kind of fell away from that. I was having my morning devotionals every day, but then I'd just go on my day and I really, occasionally I might stop and think something or talk to God, but most of the time it was just me going about my day until I was with him again the next morning. And so in some of my contemplative time and when I was sitting with him, it struck me, and I don't recall what caused me to think about it, but I was like, I really miss that 4 years because we were constantly together. Like I felt like God was right there carrying me through the whole thing. And so I thought, well, there's no reason I can't do that now. I have to think about it now because I'm not in the struggle. Now things are good. And typically when we're struggling, it's easy to think about God. It's when things are going good that we're not thinking about him because, hey, I got it. I'm in good shape here. And
Wait a minute. I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was easy to be a Christian, to be a follower of Christ, to walk with him in that daily walk when things are good. But when things get tough, isn't that where most people tend to turn away?
I think the opposite. I feel like people tend to lean on God when they're down, like when they're going through cancer, they're praying.
Yeah.
They may not pray any other time, but when they're sick or somebody that they know is on death's door, they're reaching out to God. when things are going good, I feel like, hey, I'm doing good. And they just don't think about God as much because they don't have a need to.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? That's my thought.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I just wonder sometimes maybe it's the more desperate situations, but I guess I feel like maybe you were a little bit different in the sense to me that, maybe it wasn't life or death situations, but, some of us go through those hard times, and that's where we tend to just kind of let go and let the world carry us along, with whichever way the wind blows us.
That is true. And what I feel like I see from people who have had success in our industry is the ones that are struggling, and people in general, when they're in the muck, they typically are just like, why am I going through this? And they're,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
well, it's me,
yeah,
versus what I got good at doing early on in my business was saying, what are you trying to teach me? What am I supposed to be learning so I can move from this to the next thing you want to teach me? Because I was convinced that God was using this business to help me become the man he wanted me to be.
yeah.
And so, in that sense, I do agree with you there. I do feel like people let kind of go by the way of the world, and I just don't have any luck, and no, it's my fault, and nobody cares for me or whatever. Versus being optimistic and having a good attitude, and trying to see the good in what God's trying to do through that.
So I think of two examples because I think Carmen and I can relate. But I think of two examples of maybe we can apply to what you're sharing about, and that's when a chicken, when the baby chick is still in the egg, right? If you take that egg and crack it open for the chicken to come out, even when it's ready, before it starts pecking on that egg to get out, right? They say the chances are pretty good that the chicken's going to die, the baby chick. Same thing with the turtles, right? When the mama turtles come up to lay their eggs,
Right.
and they bury them and go
Scrambling to the
back out,
beach.
that they don't want anybody to borrow those babies or pick them up and put them in the water because they're just going to die, because it's through the struggles that they become strong.
Correct.
It's through that process. And well, I think we can relate to you with our business. It was the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we became stronger because of it. It didn't feel like it at the time, guaranteed.
Oh yeah, it's not fun. It's very painful, but
Yeah.
when you come out the other side, but if you're looking for the lesson and you're looking for what you're supposed to be learning through this, a lot of times I'll find it within minutes. Now, sometimes it would take me a day or two to figure out what I was supposed to
Yeah.
learn, but most of the time now it's pretty quick. Like, okay, I can understand that. I had an example of that. My most recent example was a few years back where I had a customer. I was beating up my payroll company because they had increased my price, and I didn't know. They told me that it was an introductory price, but they never told me that. And so that, a year went by and I get this big price increase. So I was beating them up. Like, you didn't tell me that. I want, blah, 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 blah. I was fussing. And then all of a sudden I got a customer that tells me that another competitor has been knocking on their door, and they finally decided to let them give them a quote, and my prices are too high. And I need to see if I can lower my prices. I'm like, why am I going through this? And I was like, oh, I know why I'm going through this. If I'm beating up my vendors, how can I not expect my customers to beat me up over price? So I just went back to him. I said, hey, to my vendor, I said, hey, just give me give me a fair price. I know you need to make money. I don't want an introductory price. I don't want a discount. I just want what's going to be consistent. I know it needs to change a little bit periodically, but I want the consistency. Okay, so they gave me the price, but that was the last time I did that. But most people just like, why am I going through this? And they don't think about what they're doing to people.
Wow. Yeah. So let's come up to the present, right? Your everyday life with Christ now. So what does that look like right now? I could be, we could say, is he sitting right there with you now? But what I mean, because I know he's there with you, he's ever present, right? And and you welcome him to walk with you. But if you go out to the grocery store, or go to the gas station, or maybe you take a walk around the block, what does that look like as you're doing that? Does he have you focusing on certain things, or are you just having a casual conversation? Is he a part of your
sometimes,
conversation with him?
if I'm by myself, then more of the time I might be talking with him. If I'm on a walk, I might be talking about things. I'll see somebody and I'll be talking to him about somebody I see, or maybe something that's going on. Or sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, look, the trees are beautiful today. Thank you for making the beautiful trees, or the birds, or whatever." Typically, if I'm with somebody else, I'm more engaged with that person than I am with God. But hopefully, I'm showing godly values through to them in my conversations, and that's a big thing for me, is trying to be more cognizant of that, because I'm very outspoken generally as a person. And so as I talked earlier, being conscious of trying to communicate godly to people with love versus just spewing the first thing. Most of the time, if you were talking to me, I'm already trying to think of what I want to answer. I might even cut you off and interrupt you so I can interject my opinion. And so now I'm trying to be more cognizant of actually thinking and responding in such a way that hopefully it engages them, and they see a good Christian person.
Yeah. So I picture, you're talking about having that conversation with them. You're engaged in that conversation, but it's like it's actually Jesus having that conversation with them through you.
Yes.
And I don't mean in like, hey, let's talk about baptism and Bible study and prayer time. I'm not talking about that kind of, it could be that kind of conversation, but it's just an everyday conversation. But now you're letting God guide you and be that reflection of him, right? That's how I.
Yeah, that's the main thing. I want to be the reflection of Jesus, and I want to be a reflection of the miracles he's worked in me to help me become a much better, refined person. And I just feel really passionate and called towards trying to figure out what God's going to direct me to next, to hopefully steering more people into this type of a relationship, because I just feel like people pray, but they're missing a whole another level of what the experience could be.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that brings me back to your business. So, there's a lot of things you could do. You're an entrepreneur at heart. I think some things that you were reading at the time, maybe Rick Warren's book, Purpose Driven Life. You decided, hey, I don't have to work in this particular environment. I can go on out and do this, and now I'm going to allow God to be the driver. Did that have an impact on you choosing the business that you're in now? And let me clarify that a little bit so other people would know what I'm asking you. That you're a part of a faith-based franchise system in the commercial cleaning industry called Office Pride. So great core values, right? They're biblically founded. What was the decision behind you deciding to be a part of such a franchise system, such a business?
Well, really, that whole thing kind of morphed because I looked at franchises in the late '90s, and everything I looked at was $750,000 to start, and I thought, that's crazy. I can't do that. And so I soured on the whole idea of franchising. And then when I left Chrysler, I had no intention of franchising. I was actually getting into insurance sales, and I was doing pretty well. But I came across a guy I used to work with, and he had found Office Pride for a different avenue. And so I was trying to sell him insurance, and I was like, "What are you doing?" And he told me about Office Pride. And at the time, I had read Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant book, and what he talked about in there was what he considered to be a big business was a $10 million business with 500 employees. And at the time, Office Pride was a low entry fee. I could start it out of my garage, and I thought I could build a $10 million business right here in Indianapolis with 500 employees and start at my garage for that cost. So I'm like, heck yeah, like I can go clean. I don't know anything about cleaning, but can't be that hard. So I talked to my wife and she's like, well, I can clean. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So
Sounds like
that's kind of, and what's that?
that sounds like exactly when Scott asked me if we
We've
wanted to
heard that
go into
conversation
business.
before.
Yeah, we've had that conversation before. I'm like, yeah, I know how to clean. Like, I had years and years of experience under the strict tutelage of my mother. And she was, you're awesome, by the way, Mom.
So then what happened from there?
So I'm like, well, let me come and see what you're doing. So I went and worked with this guy on a Friday night. I helped him clean some buildings. I'm like, heck, I can do that. And so then he gave me a book that the founder, Todd Hopkins, had written called 5 Wisdoms for Entrepreneurial Survival. So I gobbled through that book again. I was reading tons of books at the time. I went right through that book. I liked everything I read in that book. He had another couple books. I think I read those books. And when I did my due diligence and looked at other commercial cleaning franchises, what I found was they were interested in selling me a franchise. That was really it. But Office Prod, I felt like was committed to helping me get to $10 million with 500 employees because that's what I wanted. And so I'm like, I believe that. I felt like Todd was totally committed to that. He's still committed to that. And I was like, we're doing this. Like, we can do it. So that's what we took the last of my buyout money from my previous job and bought our franchise.
And see, I love that story because, I love for people to catch that it's because we had the same experience. It's about your dream, right? And Todd and the system was tied into that. What's your dream and how can we help you fulfill that? And that dream is what fulfills the purpose of God when you're in line with your relationship with God and in His Word. And as Rick Warren would put it, that purpose-driven life, right?
Right.
When it's driven by Christ. So I love that story.
Yeah, that story. And then, so then everything just kind of, my whole life just kind of changed in a whole different direction, and still a lot of reading going on. Difficult to read during those years. But, I still was able to read some, and just mentorship I found along the way, a spiritual mentor that really helped me. Todd has been a good mentor for me. I've had a couple other mentors that help guide me along the way. I'd never looked for a mentor in my life. Like, I had the world by the tail. I didn't need anybody's help. And so when I got into business, I'm like, I need some help. I need some guidance. And God spoke through those people to me whenever I was struggling with things. They would give me guidance on things that would clear my path for the next obstacle to come. And, ultimately it was just life-changing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chris, what do you want people to walk away if they took the time to listen and watch you today and what you had to share? What do you hope they got out of what you shared with them today?
I hope what they get out of this is that a relationship with God isn't just about sitting down and praying. Of course, that is very important. But a relationship with God is just being present with Him. Just saying, God, I'll look over to the chair next to me that's empty, unless my wife happens to come down in time to join me. But most of the time, that's only on the weekends, most of the time. But I'll look over there and just presume that God's sitting there with me, looking at the lake with me, and we're having a conversation. I may, talk with him about some things. I go into my devotional. I have some gratitude, and, I just sit there and talk with him. And I think it doesn't have to, it's just like a conversation. You just have to sometimes be quiet enough to try and let him talk. And when you're reading the Bible in conjunction with these things, when you've talked with him about an issue or something that you're struggling with, or asking him what he has in mind for you, and then you follow that up with some scriptural reading, and not just sitting down and trying to read a chapter, but maybe sometimes you read the same paragraph 3 times and try and see, what are you trying to talk to me about here? And sometimes he may give you direction right there. And so, just trying to allow God to speak into you, and being present with him is it's an incredibly powerful, life-changing experience. And at least it has been for me. And I really believe if people will commit the time and make it a habit, and it's not easy. I mean, people's lives are busy. We don't like that word, but people's lives get hectic and busy. But put it in your calendar. I mean, even if you have to, if you get to work and you got a little bit of time once you get to work, 9 o'clock, put it in your calendar every day. I'm going to spend 15 minutes with God. Start it out small. Put it on your calendar. So if somebody says, "Hey, I want to have a meeting. Can I meet you at 9 tomorrow?" No, I have another appointment at 9. I could do 9:15. They don't have to know what the appointment is. But put it in your calendar that you're going to spend 15 minutes with God, and start out small and then let it grow from there. Start out small, and then maybe, 3 months of 15 minutes to go to 20 minutes or 25 minutes, and just start letting it expand. But put it in your calendar, commit some time to it, keep the appointment, because it becomes the best part of your day when you really make it the habit. Like I say, my day is completely a mess if I don't have it.
Yeah. Good information. Good stuff. I was going to say, but then I decided not to, but now I'm going to, that I had to start out small with you. I could only take you in small doses. And I just let that grow, and now we're great friends.
I don't doubt that one bit. I really don't. It
could have been a little
I can be pretty brutal.
Carmen, how about you? Any closing thoughts from what short time you were able to join us?
Well, I came in the middle of it, so I feel like I missed a lot. So I'm looking forward to watching it after the fact and listening to your story, Chris. But I agree 100% on a couple of points that I did hear. The first one being that, and I think it's so true here, where we live in a land of privilege that we take for granted, that we're like, I can do it. And I feel like most generally people won't really lean on God until they're to a point they're on their knees, because they don't feel like they have anywhere else to turn. So I agree with that. And having done missions trips also, to see how someone in another country lives that isn't as privileged as the United States, it's very eye-opening. And then the other thing was the intentionality of spending time in the Word. I just started reading through the Bible, and it's hard to grow if you're not exposing yourself to things and you're not trying to learn. And so being intentional about being in the Word, but then also, like you said, talking with mentors or having mentors, whether it be for business or like for your faith, to have someone bounce things off. And I do it with Scott, because he's a more seasoned Christian than I am, but so I think that the intentionality that you mentioned as well is definitely key in growing in our walk with the Lord.
Yeah. Well, I have to say that I had several takeaways. You had a lot of teachable moments in what you shared today, Chris, and a lot of good information. Of course, you choked me up a little bit too when you started talking about your relationship with Kim and how hard you were there in some of those beginning years. But I think there's a great message in that people can take away, not just the husband or the man who's a part of that significant other, but the wife or the woman as well. Because I'm sure Kim played a big role in her reflection of God and in her patience and all those kind of things that you needed for her to be, that you weren't even thinking about at that time.
Right.
To bring you to this point. And so I love that part of what you shared, and how that relationship, as you said, with Christ is life-changing. And we're talking about eternally. And so I think people sometimes take, your relationship or our relationship in general as Christians of, that's just some religious thing that they're doing. And it's not. It's literally life-changing. You don't know until you experience it. And you can't experience it if you don't take the time to know Him. Right. And so that's a major part of what I got from what you shared today. So let me close it with this by saying that, if you're watching this and you just heard Chris share about his life, that's what you see in Chris, in his everyday walk with the Lord, where the Lord brought him from to what he's doing now. And wow, we're looking forward to hearing what he's going to do with your life from this point, Chris, with that focus that you have and where you've come in that relationship with him. Exciting stuff. So that's what you get when you look at that everyday walk with Christ. And so we pray that that will become a focus for you in your everyday life. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, be blessed.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us this week on Your Everyday Life podcast. We pray that you were encouraged. Make sure to visit our website at youreverydaylife.org, where you can subscribe and receive weekly devotional blogs from Scott. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Your Everyday Life. Be sure to give us a comment on how words of encouragement has inspired you, and pass the word on to a friend who you know needs encouragement. Be sure to tune in again next week when once again we will look at everyday life topics and apply words of encouragement. Until then, stay encouraged by what you heard today, and may you be greatly blessed.